Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show will revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Moosie Drier and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Moosie Drier, and today we are honored to welcome a legendary songwriter who has collaborated on some of the most incredible musicals, such as Ragtime, Anastasia, Once on This Island, Seussical, among many others. She's won a Tony Award, Daytime Emmy Award, Drama Desk Award, Outer Circle Critics Award, Olivier Award. She's been nominated for Academy Awards, Golden Globe Awards. She wrote and performed several of the Schoolhouse Rock songs, such as A Noun is a Person, Place, or Thing, the one that helped me in school, The Preamble, and my personal favorite, No More Kings. She's responsible for such jingles as What Would You Do for a Klondike Bar and Bounty the Quicker Picker-Upper. She's received the Oscar Hammerstein Award for a Lifetime Achievement and is a member of the Theater Hall of Fame. And most importantly, she's a fellow New Yorker. Please help us welcome Lynn Ahrens. Lynn, thanks so much for joining us.
Of course, with an introduction like that.
Yes.
A beautiful, amazing career. Wow. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lynn, for being here.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
So we do have a lot to cover, but let's start by going back with you. So growing up, did you come from a musical household? And when did you first start realizing that you had a talent for it?
Well, I didn't come from a household where anyone played an instrument or anything like that, but everybody sang a lot, sort of a cappella, washing the dishes and so on. So, there was music in the air. I have a wonderful treasured recording of I think I must have been about 3.5 years old, of my little self setting my own lyrics to the melody of Frosty the Snowman. So I think even then I may have known that I was going to end up doing this crazy career. But I think it was just genetic in some form or fashion.
What were some of your favorite shows growing up?
I have to be honest, we did not have a television until I was about 14, and my parents just resisted it. We listened to radio. I feel like I'm from, a former century or something, but I guess maybe I am. But I loved the sound of the radio. I loved the stories that were told. There were these fabulous old broadcasts that stick in my mind, that I remember listening to, and once we got a television set, I was big on what was it called? The Mouseketeers.
Oh.
And, I just loved the Mouseketeers. I wanted to be Annette. And, that was very influential. I would ride my little pony around the living room singing and stuff like that. So, but I must say, I don't think that the media influenced me as much as just listening to the sound of the world and singing a lot in high school and learning to play the guitar in college. And I don't know, one thing just led to another.
When you're talking about listening to radio, it's kind of like reading, and then there's your story. But in your mind, you're visualizing it the way it fits comfortably in your head. So sometimes it's better than something on television. I know the youngsters would disagree with me, but
I think you're absolutely right. And the pictures form in your head, and it's almost like writing in a way, because you're listening to a story and you're seeing it, you're visualizing it in your head. I think it was extremely influential. And the best thing that ever happened to me in recent years was the development of Audible, because I love being told a great story with a great reader, and I guess I'm an oral person. I like that form. Awesome. And so.
I'm also curious, did you have a favorite Broadway show?
A favorite Broadway show?
When you were a kid, was there anyone that really stuck out to you?
Honestly, I hate to be so boring. I never went to Broadway till I was in college, and that was Fiddler on the Roof. And I went with a boyfriend of mine in college, and my reaction to it was a sort of a stunned confusion, because I suddenly thought, oh, stories can be told in song, and I had never considered that for one moment. And it took me a long time thereafter to actually start writing for the theater. I wrote for other forms, as you know, I got into
we're about to ask that. Yes.
All that stuff. But for the stage, it took me a long time for the penny to drop to realize that this was what I was sort of meant to do.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, speaking of the other things, okay. So I grew up on Schoolhouse Rock. those songs are ingrained in every one of my generation. In my opinion, the best learning tool there's ever been. The
Yeah.
story I read is incredible how you got involved. So you were a copywriter for
Okay,
McCaffrey and McCall and the firm that started Schoolhouse Rock.
that's
We,
correct,
we,
but I was a secretary. Let's
a
go back.
secretary. Oh, so
Yeah,
were
that
you
was
there when the whole decision to start it
No,
happened?
no, it was on the air already. They had done the multiplication series,
Mhm.
so they had done all the times tables, three's magic number and zero my hero and all of those songs. And Bobby Duro who was a jazz musician, had been brought into the process by one of the creative directors who was also a jazz aficionado. He loved Bobby and he loved Bobby's work, and he enlisted him to write that first season of songs for the multiplication series. And then when I came on that, I believe the first series that they started doing after multiplication was grammar. So I think I did, and I would bring my guitar to work and type, and get coffee for people and all the things that, a secretary would do in those days. And I would bring my guitar and at lunchtime I would write songs and play and sing to myself in my little cubby. And one day, the boss went by and said, "Oh, I hear you write songs." And I thought I was being scolded, and I started to put my guitar away. And he said, "No, no, no, it's okay." He said, "We hear you're a good songwriter. Would you like to try one for Schoolhouse Rock?" And I did, and here I am.
Wow.
Written a ton of them now. Yeah.
Incredible. So, I mean, no lie, I passed the test because of the preamble song. Watching it the other day, I was amazed that I knew all the words.
Everywhere, everywhere.
That's
I know.
right.
Those were I know. I take full credit for our country's
Yeah, so
constitution.
my kids know and love the songs also. I mean, that's such a credit to you for creating something that's like so catchy and crosses generations, and I've seen Schoolhouse Rock in concert. So first, who thinks to write a song to the preamble, and what was the process there? Did they say we need a song for this and give you an assignment, or you had free reign to do whatever you wanted?
They pretty much gave us free reign, especially at the beginning of when I started to write. It was a very loosey-goosey time, and they just said, "Oh, just write a song, any song you want about civics." I think that's how they put it. And so I don't know why I chose the preamble, but it seemed musical to me when I read it. I was looking through history books and this and that, and I read the preamble maybe for the first time, and I suddenly began to hear it sung in my head. And when I think about it, basically those words are exactly what the preamble is, with maybe a little tweak here or there, but I was rhyming odd things like "for the United States of America," and odd choices.
Ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. In 1787, I'm told our founding fathers all sat down.
And I look back on it and I think, oh my goodness, I made a whole career out of 5 chords and, this sort of brazen young girl just thinking she could do anything. Yeah, so
Cool.
they didn't supervise us too much. We just turned in our work. They loved it usually. I was never to my memory asked for a rewrite or anything like that. They just kind of loved them and sent them off to the animator, and they went on the air about a year later. And
Wow.
that was it. It was wild. I did become a copywriter. I was a copywriter after my initial beginning as a secretary, and then I stayed a copywriter for about 5 or 6 years, I think, and then decided to go freelance as a songwriter.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
So on
I
the
thought,
preamble song, you didn't just write it. That's you vocally, right? You're singing it.
that's me vocally. A lot of
Yeah.
them are, yeah, nouns is me, and yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And my son, I only have one child. He's 19 now, but when he was, yay big, I remember going, "Where's the Schoolhouse Rock?" Because Jonathan says he literally passed a test because of your song.
Mhm.
And why not? Why wouldn't we have, if it, there are 30 people to a classroom sometimes for kids, especially in the public schools and many schools. But like, if there's something else outside of that that can cause someone to like click and go, oh, like as far as multiplications or, the way the government works and anything. Like, why not? We just don't see any of that anymore, which bothers me. But I have to tell you something. This is interesting. I'm going to pull this up. Sorry, Jonathan, this isn't on our question list. So we do our research here, contrary to what people might believe. So last night I was watching Preamble, not that I haven't seen it so many times, and I've got it on the video. And then there's a little part that comes up. Where we go? Okay, this is where he goes into the ballot box.
Correct.
And to make a choice.
Yeah.
Now,
Now they spelled my name wrong.
I noticed that. That was my next question.
They spelled that wrong, but then this side, Niel, which should be, if you bend this way a little, go to your other side. Yep.
Yeah.
Niel.
That's your husband?
That's my husband. It should be spelled Neil, but we're misspelled.
Yeah, the irony of the Schoolhouse Rock misspelling.
But over your head, there's Tom Yohe. He was one of pretty much the main designer of the show. He did all the designs for the characters. Then on the other side of you here is George Newell. He's the guy who said, "Hey, honey, want to write a song?" to me. There's Rad Stone, who was all these guys are gone.
Yeah. I thought that was fascinating. Great Easter egg of its time. Of course, never would have caught it because it's a blink. And
I love that, being that big like that. It's so great.
Sometimes it was much better than the cartoon. What was the feeling? Do you remember when you first started seeing your work on television?
Oh, it was incredible. It was incredible to, you're sitting there at a desk job basically, and suddenly you're on national TV with your song and your voice. You can imagine it was shocking. Actually, I sort of had no idea that it would actually go that far. I plunked into a little tape recorder, and
Right.
and suddenly I was on national television. So it was pretty extraordinary. Those were really good times. Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned at the beginning that No More Kings is my favorite. So what's the one Schoolhouse Rock song of yours that most fans tell you is theirs? And do you have one of yours that is your favorite?
Well, yeah, oddly, a lot of people like the preamble, and they say it helped me pass, history or whatever. I love a lot of them. The one that I find sort of intriguing is Three Ring Circus, or it's actually called Three Ring Government, and nobody knows it really because they wouldn't allow it on the air at that time because they felt that it was making fun of the government.
Oh,
And it was. And now I wish they'd play it. I mean, I think it did go on the air at some point, but it's comparing the three bodies of the government to a circus.
To a circus. Well, I think now it might be kind of fair, but that's just my
Kind of pressing, don't you think? I know.
The audience is kinda like the country, keeping an eye on their performance. Ring one executive, two is legislative, that's Congress. Ring three judiciary, see, it's kinda like my circus.
There are a lot of really good ones. I love some of Bobby Duro's. I love Figure Eight, which is just so beautiful.
Oh, yes.
Really the magic number. There's some beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
And you also wrote for Captain Kangaroo?
I did. I wrote for Captain Kangaroo. I created a few children's shows. I had a small production company at one point with a partner, a woman named Marilyn Olin, and we created a few shows for ABC TV. One of them won the Emmy, which was a little show called Help, which was first aid lessons for kids. They were animated. They were sort of knockoffs of Schoolhouse Rock in a way, but very sweet.
In the 90s, I bought a compilation CD of these I think they were kind of grunge bands singing.
Yeah, they covered the songs, right? Yeah, they all covered the songs.
Yes. I thought that was very cool.
It's great.
Now, so enough of making youngsters in America or around the world much smarter. Let's move on to, you wrote the jingle. Yeah.
Heck with those kids.
Heck with those kids. Those wiseacres. So you wrote the jingle for the Klondike Bar commercials or ads or campaign, and also for Bounty.
Yep. Quicker Picker Upper.
Okay. How'd that come about? The Quicker Picker Upper. Yeah.
Well, when I left the advertising agency that was doing Schoolhouse Rock, I happened to meet a guy named Tony Smythe who had a jingle company, and he was just this wonderful funny, friendly guy. And he said, oh, something about, I like your face. Come up and see me. And I went up and saw him and brought my little reel of children's television stuff. And he hired me as one of his basically group of jingle writers who they went to regularly. So they would get assignments from advertising agencies and they'd give them to us. And we were a little team and we would all compete. I was the only girl and there were maybe 3 or 4 guys. And we would all write a jingle for, let's just say, Klondike Bar, and one of us would win. And the client would pick one of those songs and then we would all sing on it. So I, sold a few big ones. Klondike Bar was one and Bounty was another. And, there were some others during the course of that, but I sang on a million of them. So, when you hear, the choral group behind, I don't know what, a Budweiser commercial or something with those big verses, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm singing in the chorus,
No kidding.
Yeah. Well, that was a wild time because we would all go in and we would, be booked to sing on various jingles. And at the time you would get to sing with famous, not soon to be famous people. They weren't famous yet, but like Luther Vandross, I sang with Luther.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Patty Austin and Michael Bolton, and they were all Mark Cohen. They were all doing jingles at the time.
Your longtime writing partner, Stephen Flaherty, and I saw the two of you guys on YouTube on doing something together, working together, and you can always tell when people have chemistry, like instantly, just the way they're bouncing off each other, and and you guys clearly do. So, how did that partnership start? And what have you guys done, as a collaboration?
Well, I mean,
Besides everything, yeah.
Besides everything, pretty much nothing. No.
Yeah.
We met in the BMI Musical Theater Workshop, which is a very famous workshop for musical theater writers who want to get into the business, I guess, and learn the craft of musical theater writing. And a friend of mine had taken it and she said, oh, it wasn't for me, but I think you might enjoy it. And I said, okay. So I auditioned. You had to audition to get into it. And I was accepted. And so the first year of the workshop, it just keeps going. But the very first year, they give you assignments and you work with a bunch of different people and you try and, hook up with people that you might want to work with. And Stephen was a little self-contained entity. He was this very serious, young, bearded kid, fresh out of college, writing his own music and lyrics. He never said hello. He was very shy, never looked at you. Sat over in a corner, and every time he presented, I'd say, oh, he's so good, but he doesn't need anybody to work with because he writes very good lyrics. And at the very end of the year, everyone was kind of trying to say, well, who's going to write who am I going to write the last assignment with, and everybody was trying to make partnerships. And I was standing out on the curb and talking to a few people, and Stephen went shuttling by on 57th Street toward 8th Avenue. And he got almost to the corner and he turned around, and he screamed back at me, literally screamed, hey, Lynn, do you want to write a song? And honestly, my first thought was he talks, because he never said hello. And I yelled back, sure. And that was how we began. And we wrote one song. And I remember very distinctly, I had written a lyric. It was about, this is going back a ways, but it was when people put personal ads in the Village Voice, if you can recall the good old Village Voice, and they'd put single SWM, wants to meet SWF, blah, blah, blah. And so we wrote a song about singles ads, Lonely Hearts ads, and it was a terrible song, but I remember he put his fingers down on the keys, and for the first time I thought, oh, this is really wonderful. He understands how lyrics are said, and how they're sung, and had to make sense. He was very, very good with lyrics. So that's how we began. And then we wrote several shows that never got produced, just for one reason and another. And then finally, I found a little book at the New York Public Library called "The Man Who Broke the Bank" the Man Who Broke the Bank at Monte Carlo, and that became Lucky Stiff, which was our first off-Broadway. So
I'm curious, what's the process the two of you have? I mean, I know the usual question is music or lyrics first, but how do you go about it? Do you discuss what type of mood you're going for in the song and work from there?
Pretty much, that's about right. I mean, we don't, it could be music first, it could be lyrics first. It sort of depends who has a good idea first. But we do a lot of talking and a lot of discussion of character and of like, what would this person be doing and how would they get from here to there? And we just try to figure things out structurally and dramatically, and we try to figure out how a song will transport the character from one state of mind to another, or one physical state to another. And something generally bubbles up. We always, mostly always work in the same room at the piano.
Mm.
Oh,
It's kind of
Well, that's about what I was going to ask, was your process in that. Let's just say one of you isn't sure about something, but the other is adamant. Is it you do it because the one's adamant, or do you both need to be for something?
um pretty much both of us have to be for it, but
Mhm.
I can be adamant often,
Yeah.
and I tend to I don't know, I just am. And I tend to sometimes bully him into doing something that he's not. He'll be the first one to say that, and I can admit it, but sometimes it works out quite well when
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't. And I think we're both at a point where, if it's not right, and it was my idea, I'll take full blame.
Well, following up on that, like, so what's the process for a show? Is it the two of you say, we have an idea to do music for something and then go get the book done, or getting someone to write the book? Or is it someone writes the play and says, hey, Lynn and Steven, I'd like the two of you to do music for this?
Um, I don't actually think that ever happened. I don't think anyone came to us and said, I have an idea for something. Let's the three of us start it from scratch.
Mhm.
All of our ideas, they've all been generated in one of several ways. One way is that I go shopping at a bookstore. When I say shopping, I mean looking around, reading things, reading book jackets, or we look at movies. We read. We are always open to ideas. And if we find an idea, we have either I've written the book for it. I've written the book for a lot of our shows, maybe 5 or 6 of them, maybe. Or we go to a book writer like Terrence McNally, and we say, we have an idea. Would you like to join us on this idea? We have the rights to this book, or whatever. And then other times a producer will come to us. That's the case with Ragtime. It's the case with Anastasia, Seussical. They came to us and asked us to write the show, and hired a book writer to work with us. And so it's different ways, but I don't, no book writer has ever approached, well, they have approached us, but we've never done a show from that direction. But doesn't mean we won't.
Right.
Yeah.
So you did Lucky Stiff, and that went to off Broadway, and then you had Once on This Island. How did that come about?
I found a little book right in the public library. I found both of them. Let's see. Lucky Stiff was at the New York Public Library, where they were selling off books that nobody had
Mm-hmm.
taken out. So I bought it for $1.50, and that was that novel, which is right up there somewhere. And Once on This Island was also a little novel, but I found it at a Barnes and Noble on a used bookshelf, when they used to have used books at Barnes and Noble. And I took it out of the shelf, and it was colorful, and I opened it up, and the first page of lyrics, well, they weren't lyrics, but they seemed like lyrics to me. It was the first page of her text, was so beautiful that it actually ended up being the first words of the show. It just, boom, there it was. And
Yeah.
I brought it home. I remember I read that novel in about an hour and a half, and I got in a cab, and I went over to Stevens, and I rang his bell, and I said, I think I have our next show.
Wow.
So that was a pretty serendipitous event.
I'm curious,
Right.
do you have any say in casting at all? Do you have to sit in auditions?
Oh, absolutely. We have approval. Yeah, on
Oh,
every show.
great.
Mhm. We love casting. Every show, I mean, first of all, actors are so incredible, and they make us look good. If they're good, we look good. And we've just made so many incredible friends and along the way, who sing gorgeously and will, come out and help us out if we have to do a demo or something. It's wonderful.
Hmm.
A wonderful
So
community.
So the show gets nominated for Tonys and wins an Olivier Award. Likely very elated, but do you remember when you first heard that and read that? Or, what was that like?
Yes, it was wonderful. I'm my mother's daughter, so the minute that something wonderful happens and I get nominated, my first thought is, I'm going to lose. That's my first thought. And it's to deflate my expectations, and
Sure.
then of course, the second thought is, what am I going to wear? And so that becomes, well, it diverts you from the panic of actually being nominated. But it's fantastic to be in that circle of nominees. And then, when you actually win, it really makes you feel as if you're part of something bigger than yourself. It's not even like you belong to a little special club. It's like you belong to a great big club of people who love theater. And it's
Yeah.
a wonderful feeling. Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, so years later, Once on This Island does win for Best Revival. And we mentioned before we started recording, one of my friends, Shauna Silva, was producer on that. So
Yes.
how does that go about when someone wants to do a revival on one of your works? Do they have to clear everything through you first? How does that go about?
Well, yeah, they do. They do. If it's a Broadway revival, they have to come to us. And that whenever it's in New York or London, or they're different rules, but they're first class productions, whether it's the first production or a revival. And so, yeah, they have to come to you. You get approval of casting. You have as much or as little input as you choose to have. Some people don't want to have any input. They say, sure, do your thing. Great. Go to Broadway with our blessing. And Stephen and I are like, we'll be there every day. We'll be sitting in those bleachers every day, watching over you. And the director of that particular production, Michael Arden, he's a brilliant genius. He's just a wonderful guy. And he had a vision for the show. And so I remember I didn't know what to expect. And I went in there and I sort of was in shock a little bit. And I said, my God, there's a live goat here and chickens. And somebody just went by with what looked like a bucket of blood. What's happening here? And it was very scary. And then it turned out that it was just fabulous, fabulous, imaginative production that he did, which did win the Tony. It was quite stunning. So yeah.
I'll move on. I want to ask about also A Christmas Carol. I saw that production at Madison Square Garden when it happened. Yeah, we did it with Alan Menken. So you wrote the book for that. What are your memories of that one?
Oh, that was like a gift that just fell in my lap. Alan called me up. I knew Alan because of the BMI Musical Theater Workshop. And the reason I knew him is because I didn't know him before, but he was part of the workshop. He had come up in the workshop and learned his craft in the workshop and stuff. And when I auditioned to get into that workshop before I'd ever written a theatrical lyric, he was on the admissions committee and he heard my early work. So he had seen me, he knew who I was. And when it came time to choose a lyricist for Christmas Carol, he called me up and he said, Lynn, I know you're working with Stephen, I know, but and I said, well, let me think about it because I have a partner and I don't want to, I don't want him to feel bad. And I talked it over with Stephen and I said, I just think this would be good for both of us, particularly for me, but it would be good for both of us because there's so many incredible people involved. And if I get to know them, I bet that we will work with them another time. And Stephen was wonderful. And he said, of course, go with God, he said, I'll learn a new music program. And he learned finale, so he used the time well as I was doing Christmas Carol. And the wonderful thing is, the show ran for 10 years. Every year we had a different celebrity Scrooge. We all came back together every year to do little rewrites and to fix little things. And by the 10th year, it was so fabulous. Mike Ahrens, who was the director, got married to Susan Stroman during the course of it. She was our choreographer. He was the director. They got married during the course of Christmas Carol. He also passed away before the last year. So it was this whole life experience and circle of friends that we doing a musical together. It was like a short story or a long story. It was just wonderful. And now Stephen and I are working on a new project with Susan Stroman. And so it actually, I didn't lie, it worked out. We're actually going to London in July to have a concert of this particular show that she's directed and choreographed. So, that was one of the happiest times of my life. Every Christmas to go back there and hobnob with the Scrooges and watch this huge extravaganza happen. It was just fantastic.
Well, I want to move on to Ragtime because I have to say I love the book, I love the movie, but when I saw the musical, I was blown away. It was phenomenal, just a great cast. You know, Brian Stokes Mitchell, Audra McDonald, Marin Mazzie, and even I didn't realize this till I looked up later, Leah Michelle. So
Yeah,
great music. So what do you remember about that whole show, getting it into production? Because when I saw the movie, no way did I ever think this would make a great musical, but I would have been wrong.
well, lucky for us, E.L. Doctorow was still alive at the time. Wonderful, unbelievably great man. And he had done what they call separating the rights. So he gave the rights to the movie company, but he withheld the stage rights. And so they were optioned by a producer named Garth Drabinsky, who is very notorious for many reasons. He was a larger than life character who got the rights to Ragtime and made everybody audition to get their place on that team,
Oh.
including Terrence McNally, who wrote a 50-page treatment as an audition piece to see if, he was the right writer for it. They went on to audition 8 or 9 different composing teams. We were one of them. We were these upstarts. We had done very little. We'd done My Favorite Year, Once on This Island, Lucky Stiff, but nothing like Ragtime. And we auditioned, we wrote 3 songs. We got all those theater friends that I mentioned. They all came in and sang. We did demos and we won the job. And Garth Drabinsky was the kind of guy who would yell at you. And I remember the phone rang and I picked it up and he was on the other end yelling at me. And I didn't even know him. And he said, "All right, you got the job. But I gotta tell you, if you don't come through, I'm gonna fire you." And I said, "Okay, great. Thank you so much." I'll never forget that. And we went on to do the show, and Garth had his issues, and you can look up his life story. He ended up, yeah. I don't even want to say, but he had some bad luck along the way. But Ragtime was an incredible show, an incredible collaboration of theater artists. Frank Galati, who he's passed away now. Recently, he was a genius. He was directing, and Graciela Danielle, who remains one of my favorite people in the universe, who's now, has retired. But I just saw her recently and had lunch with her, and she's amazing. It was just a wonderful, wonderful collaboration, and it turned out pretty darn well.
Yes.
No kidding. What a character that guy was. And of course, I'm going to look him up. Was there a moment where you're watching this thing come together that you realized what you really had in Ragtime?
Yes, there actually was. And I think it was maybe the first read through where, a first read through is usually the writers are singing the material because the actors don't know it yet, and so they read the script and you sing it through. And we did the first read through, and some of the actors sight sing very well. And so Brian Stokes Mitchell started singing, and other people kind of started singing. And I started to hear what we had written, in context. And I thought, this is, I've never heard anything quite like it, And as the show evolved, it evolved and evolved. We did rewrites upon rewrites. It was not an easy show to write because, it's so complex, and it has 3 main stories, not just 2 or 1. To get it to where it is today was a long process. We had a run in Canada, we had a run in LA before it got to Broadway, and then we had a Broadway run. And through it all, we made changes right up till opening night.
Wow.
So, but in the end, here it is.
And the work, needless to say, paid off. You won the Tony for Best Score.
Yeah.
For Ragtime. And and you're probably walk us through that. Are you thinking, okay, Mom, thanks for prepping me yet again, but hey, I got to start believing, or what's going on? What's going on in that moment in Lynn's in mind when you win the Tony for Best Score for Ragtime?
Well, when you win, all that went through, this is ridiculous. All that went through my mind is, please God, don't let me forget anybody, and let me remember to thank my husband.
Or Trip. Yeah.
Or Trip.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. Gosh.
Yeah, it's just it's surreal. It's a surreal thing, and you're sort of, at least for me, it's an out of body experience. You're sort of looking down and going, "Oh, look, she's walking up to the podium. Look, she's, like, what am I doing?" It's very intimidating, and it's very joyous and emotional, and and then in the aftermath of it, you have this thing that you're holding in your hand, and it's heavy, and it's real, and it kind of grounds you a little bit, and makes you realize that you did a good job and that it was appreciated.
Yeah.
That's the amazing thing, is
Yes.
we realize that.
I said it was just an unbelievable production. I laughed Broadway.
It's coming back. We're going to have it on Broadway this year.
I saw that. I did see that.
Saw that.
Yes. So I want to ask about Seussical, because I remember that advertising campaign was all over New York when it came out. It was like, you saw posters everywhere, just like the peering through the manhole cover. And I
Yeah.
had so much fun at that
On
show.
the wall somewhere. Yeah, it's up there.
So there was a bidding war for it. I mean, how did that all come together? And who had the idea to do a musical based on Dr. Seuss's books?
It's the same producer that came up with the idea to do Ragtime, got the rights to the Dr. Seuss books, Garth Drabinsky. He thought it up. He brought us in because he was very happy with Ragtime, of course, and us. And he brought us on to write Seussical. And it was funny because I had done so much children's stuff in the past that I didn't really want to do it. I thought, I don't need to do more children's anything. I've done that. But Stephen convinced me. He said, Lynn, it's a medium where we can, any musical genre will fit, because it's the world of imagination. So we actually sat down together. We read out loud the Dr. Seuss books. And at the time we were developing it with Eric Idle from Monty Python, and Eric had some input, and we sat around, we read the books together. And when all is said and done, we sorted through the stories, and we came up with the Horton two stories that we combined into one musical, which were the most, sort of the most fully fledged of the stories. But then we hung all these little characters and song titles from the books onto the structure. So yeah, that's how it came to be. And during the course of this, that producer I mentioned had to basically abscond to Canada because there were some financial things that
Oh my gosh.
he left the country. Yeah, there was a bankruptcy. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
And Ragtime was still. Sorry, Moosie. What?
I was just gonna say, how much do I have to look up
Same.
this guy, and
Yeah, lots. But we were left with a bankrupt project and Ragtime running on Broadway with no producer, and at the helm. And so it was we were. There's a lyric from Seussical that says something like, "Ooh, what a trip," and it was very difficult. And we ended up getting the show to run out of town in Boston. Producers came on board, put it in at the Colonial Theater in Boston, where it didn't get the greatest reviews. The producers went into a tailspin. It was a lot of the designers and people were let go, and others were brought on, and it was terrible. It was just terrible. And for such an adorable, lovely, delightful show, the history of it, I always say we used to be much taller, Stephen and I. He was like 6'2" and I was 5'10", and now we're both, like this big. From that experience, we got hammered. But when all is said and done, we took the show back after it had basically failed on Broadway. And we brought it down from this overblown, overproduced, brassy, sequined thing that it had become, and we brought it back to a simple, imaginative show that could be done by a high school with a ladder and an inner tube and an oven mitt, and it can be done like that, and it's great like that. And we made it what it should be, which is a little show about the power of the imagination. And it now is one of the most produced shows in America.
I saw that, and many schools do it. Always gets permission.
Everywhere you go. We were in Hobart, Tasmania, and there was a Seussical banner on Main Street. So it's everywhere, and we survived. And our partnership, it could either have dissolved or gotten stronger, and it got stronger.
That's
so.
Well, let me ask about Anastasia. First, the movie, because how did you get involved in that, and your memories and working with Don Bluth? How was that?
Oh gosh, well, how we got involved was we had been approached by Disney to do a development for them. This is right after Once on This Island. And they thought, you know, these are two young, talented writers, and let's see what they can do. So we started developing a show for Disney that didn't go anywhere. And, you know, they cut the project loose and cut us loose. We had a development executive there named Kevin Bannerman, who we liked very much, and Kevin liked us, and he got fired. And that was the best thing that could have ever happened, because he ended up going to 20th Century Fox, and where he called us up and said, "We have a green light movie. Would you like to come audition for it?" And he knew, and because we were all cut free from Disney, we went over there. We wrote some demos, and lo and behold, we got that job. So that's how that came to be. And then we began the process of writing songs for a major motion picture with Don Bluth as the head of animation. And we got along with him so well. I just loved him. I thought he was fantastic. He's a genius. Apparently a prickly one. People were afraid of him, but we just got along with him great. And the way, flash forward to now, Don lives in not Tucson, but Sonoma or I don't know, somewhere out there. I've forgotten the name of the town. And he has a small theater, and he just put on the stage version of Anastasia.
Oh, wow.
And he got back in touch with us, and he said, you know, he said, you actually made it better, which is the stage version. So, you know, all of these things come full circle to joy. They really do. All the heartache that you go through.
You later converted that to the stage also. And here's, I'll have one bone to pick with you. And I brought this up to Shauna when I interviewed her. But first, how difficult was it in trying to decide what stays from that movie and what needs to be cut, you know, changed? And my bone is that you cut out my favorite song from the movie to the show.
Which one?
The what you call it? In the Dark of the Night.
Oh yeah, because well, sorry. Yeah, we did. That's a good song. I could tell you a funny thing about that song if you'd like. They wanted a song. Well, I will just backtrack to say that when Terrence McNally was hired as the book writer for the stage musical, he did not want it to be the cartoon put on the stage. He wanted to make it more historical and more mature and sort of more available to adults as well as, you know, teen girls. And so we decided to eliminate the two really animated characters, Rasputin, who sang that song, and Bartok, the little white albino bat sidekick. And I miss Bartok. I wanted to have a Bartok doll being across the theater, you know,
Great
to
character,
like
yes.
homage, but we didn't. We ended up not doing that. But we had to write a song for Rasputin for the movie, and we probably wrote 6 or 8 different songs, and they kept going thumbs down, because that's what happens in the movies. You're a writer for hire, and so just keep trying to write something that they're going to buy. And finally, we came up with a song that we thought was pretty good. And so we had some singers, and we had a couple of musicians, and we went into a recording studio and presented In the Dark of the Night to 2 of the studio heads and their little daughters, who were, I guess, maybe 8 or 10 at the time. And the singers sing, and everybody sings, and we're all singing and sweating, and, you know, like, please buy this song. Finally, it was literally like the 8th or 10th song we'd written. And we get all done, and the studio heads they're loving it. And one of them turns to his little girl and says, "So, honey, what did you think?" And she looked up and she said, "I've heard better." And yeah. So if you ever wanted to choke a young child, that would have been my personal time. But they did love this song. And
that song is on my Halloween playlist every year.
I'm so glad.
If you ever wanted to choke a young child.
Yes.
If you ever choke a young child, that would be the time to do it.
That's a time. We won't quote you on that. We won't make the t-shirts.
I think that should be the blurb for this episode.
Yeah. No. Let's not. So Anastasia, Ragtime, right? You go from the play to the movie, but then you did Rocky, as in Rocky Balboa, in case people don't know the boxing story. And it used to be that the plays were made into movies, but now it's often reversed. How difficult is that to take something that already has these expectations and to bring something new to it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And Rocky was a prime example of a movie with so many expectations on it, starting with the star, starting with Stallone and going to the song, Eye of the Tiger, and going to Drinking the Raw Eggs, and going to Running Up the Staircase.
Right.
And, Adrian, there are just so many iconic moments in that little movie. And when you look at the movie and read the screenplay, it's so good. You can't believe how good it is. There's a reason that it won the Oscar. It is terrific. And it was very daunting I was saying, no, no, no. Both Stephen and I were very reticent to do it. And we kind of got talked into it by Tom Meehan, the book writer, who loved the idea. And he kept saying, it sounds like a terrible idea, but it might actually be good. And we loved Tom. And so we thought, oh, what the heck. And of course, my husband was saying, you gotta do it. You gotta do it. So we did it. And in hindsight, again, it was hard. Musicals are hard. And they're, especially when they're expectations, and especially when people, you haven't written a word and they're going, oh boy, dancing boxers, and it was tough. But the great thing was we got to do it. In its first incarnation, we spent 3 months in Hamburg, Germany, with the producers who were Germans and who had optioned the project. And they took us all over to Germany, put us up in a fantastic hotel, gave us the greatest workshop and the greatest facilities and an incredibly great cast. And we all just were one big joyous family. And that experience was one of the highlights of my life, I must say. And the show was smash over there, did not succeed on Broadway, and it was very difficult on Broadway for a number of reasons, not the least of which were the expectations and the sort of the knives being sharpened in advance a little bit,
Yeah.
But when all is said and done, it was an incredible experience for us. And the actual show, now that it's not running anymore, we have rewritten it.
Oh.
But not all of it, but we've shortened it, and we realized we made some mistakes in the writing. There were tremendous mistakes in the physical production. We learned a lot from that. But the way the fight was choreographed, the way the fight was composed was all so good. And it's having a new life now. I can't talk about it yet, but it's having a new very nice new life. And yeah, so it's all worth it. But just to go away for 3 months and live in Hamburg and make all these German friends, and it was just great. And how many times in life are you going to get to take a bow in a boxing ring with Sylvester Stallone? I wasn't the case,
Yeah.
Well, we just have a couple more for you. So you and Stephen have such an incredible and memorable songs for stage. So what are your thoughts on the current trend of the jukebox musical?
Well, I'd rather see original musicals, but sometimes they're great. I mean, I Buena Vista Social Club is running right now, and it's brilliant. And I would call it a jukebox musical. They're not original songs written for the stage. They were already written and performed, but they've woven a little bit of a story around them. But the experience is so glorious. I don't care. If it's good, it's good.
Yeah. Story is everything. We
Yeah.
recently had Tim Rice on, and he basically answered it the same way. So you two heavy hitters are on the same page. Yeah.
Well, after a while, you learn what's important.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone trying to break into writing music for theater?
Oh gosh, practical advice would be get a job that enables you to write. So, even if it's a night job or a part-time job or something that gives you time to write, because that's what you really need. And then I would say write every day, see everything you can afford to see. If you can't afford to go to the theater, go to the library, take out the records, learn what structure is and what dramatic form is all about, writing for drama. And good luck to you, kid.
I love that.
Well, your career has been incredible. So just looking back at what you've done so far, is there any work that stands out a little more because of personal meaning to you?
Wow. They're all like children in a way. I hate to use that as such a corny comparison, but the truth is, as you write them, you love them, and then you send them into the world, and whatever happens to them, you love them. And some of them are good children, some of them are quiet children, some of them, don't succeed the way you hope they would, but each one is such an individual experience, and the people that you've met leave these indelible marks on you and on your soul. So I can't pick a favorite. I just can't do it.
There's no Sophie's Choice in your.
No, I can't do that.
Okay.
Don't
All
make
right.
me do it. No, don't make me.
Sophie's Choice. The musical. Come
No,
on.
no,
Okay.
no, God, no.
So you kind of answered a little bit the last one. So what you're working on next is kind of like a secret right now, right?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, it isn't really a secret. I don't want to mention the name of it, but I can, every show that we do, we go at it a little bit differently. Sometimes, I'll write a chunk of book, or sometimes Stephen will come up with some melody snippets, or, we kind of try to shake it up and shake up our writing process together a little bit. And in this particular case, we are, shall I say this? Yeah, sure, why not? We're working with a Mexican band, and we are melding our theatrical music with their non-theatrical, wonderful Mexican rock music. And that's what we're doing. So, and then having a great time.
I'm already intrigued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just,
Most importantly for you, how can people follow you on social media?
That's a really good question, because I don't really do it, but I think we have a Facebook page that's run by a wonderful fan of ours. So they can always go on Ahrens and Flaherty Facebook. And I have an Instagram account that a young woman knows how to post pictures. I don't really know how. So she does it for me every once in a blue moon. And that's just Ahrens Lynn, at Ahrens Lynn. So I'm told. Really bad. It's like I don't have time in my life for it.
Well,
I just want to say that Lynn with two N's, not like this one.
Thank you. Yes.
You are you're just as lovely as you are talented, and we thank you for your time here today.
Oh,
It's
thank
just
you.
yeah.
like you said,
I just had a feeling it would be fun, so I said, yeah.
Oh,
no, look, if we wanted to have all the questions, we'd be here all day for you. It's
Right.
incredible, but we thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you, guys.
please come back when the Super Secret Project comes
yes.
out.
Oh, for sure. Well, invite me back. Yeah, like in maybe 6
Oh.
months or something, or in a year, I'll come back for.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'd love that. So we could ask you all the other questions that we have.
Totally.
Well, again, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Moosie Drier. And again, a very special thanks to Lynn Ahrens. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast. Listening to this podcast just makes you really cool.